Former Pittsburgh Steeler and legendary quarterback Ben Roethlisberger calls out Mike Tomlin for consistently letting George Pickens get away with all these taunting penalties and not keeping him under control. So, Ben Roethlisberger, he holds a podcast on YouTube called Footballin' with Ben, where he talks about the Steelers game and everything else that's going on in the NFL. And this week, he touched on the George Pickens situation that happened versus the Los Angeles Rams during the game, where he had a crackback block and then got in the face with the Rams defender multiple times afterwards, getting unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, putting the Pittsburgh Steelers in bad situations penalty-wise, and he blames Mike Tomlin for allowing George Pickens to do this consistently with no consequences and just encouraging him. Here's the quote from his podcast. "We probably need to talk at some point about the negative plays by the receivers in terms of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. George Pickens, once again, that could have been crucial. He gets a big play, then does a taunt. And Mike Tomlin, he just pats him on the butt and tells him to get back in there. I don't know how long we allow that to keep happening. It didn't end up hurting the team, but what if it did?" And then he continues on later. "I think what is going to happen is it might get talked about in the meeting. See that rug? Lift that rug up. I've seen him do it in the past with guys. I'll put up with you until I can replace you. It looks like said something to him. You can't do it. You can't have those penalties. It seems like it's almost every week that we're having something like that happen. Again, it hasn't hurt us yet. All it takes is one time. What happens if that happens in a fourth quarter and it changes the game? Do we just keep allowing that stuff? At some point, you got to put a stop to it now before it gets out of control. That kid, I'm going to say it again, George Pickens is an absolute animal. He's a game changer. He's a difference maker. You got to get him under control before it gets out of control and you lose it forever. It can happen." End quote. So it sounds like Ben Roethlisberger, he's talking from experience with this happening. And we all know he's been in the quarterback room in Pittsburgh for a long time. He's been in the offense. He's seen Antonio Brown act up many times and then destroy his career by asking for a trade, going to Raiders, then going to New England, then going to Tampa Bay. Even though he got a Super Bowl, he could have been in the Hall of Fame if he just stayed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Ben Roethlisberger, he's had first-hand experience with this, seeing wide receivers act out of control, Mike Tomlin not do anything about it, but just encourage it, tap him on the butt, tell him to go back in the game and keep playing, and not give real discipline, saying you can't do this without real consequences. Obviously, as Big Ben said, George Pickens is an amazing player. He does some special things on the football field. He has the best hands in the NFL in terms of securing the catch in contested catch situations. He always high points the ball. He's a really good receiver. But he seems like after every single big play or just after every single catch that he makes, he has something to say to the defender, whether it be a slant route or whether it be a go route. Whenever he catches the ball, if you look at his emotion, if you look at how he just looks like he's taunting the defender after every single play. And that's not something you want to happen, because depending on the referee, they could throw a penalty on almost every single catch George Pickens makes, because afterwards he's taunting the defender. But obviously they're not going to throw a penalty on every single catch, because then he would be kicked out of the game. But some referees might, and that's where it's taken out of hand, because Mike Tomlin needs to control him, tell him he can't do this. And in terms of actual discipline and consequences that Big Ben says that Mike Tomlin needs to get him under control, I can't really see him doing anything, because what are they going to do? Suspend him? No. What are they going to do? Bench him? If they bench him, they go on to lose the game, because they won't win that game without George Pickens, their best wide receiver. So what really are they going to do with George Pickens if he continues to get penalties? There's not really much Mike Tomlin could do. That's why I kind of understand what Big Ben is saying, because he doesn't want it to turn into another Antonio Brown situation or Le'Veon Bell situation for the Steelers in terms of getting too out of control based off how they act. But on the other hand, what do you really expect him to do? Because it's still George Pickens. You're not going to bench the guy. You're not going to suspend the guy just for unsportsmanlike penalties. Obviously, he's showing emotion in the game. He's showing that he really, really cares. He wants to get the ball. He wants to make the catch. And he wants to win the battle against the opponent that's lining up across from him. So he's showing that emotion in the game. He just needs to show the emotion a little bit less and keep his head down and keep on working with a passion. So I do understand it from both perspectives. But now Mike Tomlin, he was talking to the media about this, about George Pickens, about the behavior on the field, and he had this to say. Oftentimes, it's our job to feel the tenure of the crew and to adjust our behavior accordingly. We've got into the game, man, and that crew had a certain tenure, and we didn't adjust to it. As professionals, that's our job. Am I worried about those issues being an issue moving forward? No, I'm not. But it's a great opportunity to talk about learning the tenure of a crew. Sometimes certain crews are more tolerable regarding certain things than others. That's just the realities of the NFL. So, based off that quote, it looks like he's just blaming everything on the referees. He's not giving any accountability to George Pickens, saying basically you can't do this, just learn based off the crew's calling that certain things you're allowed to do, certain things you're not. But he's not really saying anything but blaming the referees for throwing the penalties, which actually makes zero sense, because if the referees wanted to, they could have got George Pickens kicked out the game in the first half of how many times he had taunting penalties, but they didn't throw a flag. They're lucky the referees only threw a flag in the fourth quarter one time on George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. George Pickens got taunting penalty every single play he made. They're actually lucky he didn't get kicked out the game way earlier. So I don't get blaming the referees for that, because the referees did actually a good job in terms of holding back the penalties in that kind of nature. Only 2 taunting penalties, and both come in the fourth quarter when the whole game the Steelers were taunting. That just doesn't make sense why Mike Tomlin would blame the referees in that situation. But I guess so. You have to learn, kind of see what the referees do and adjust to that. Also, one last thing before I wrap up this video. The Pittsburgh Steelers and George Pickens, they're going up against former cornerback Ahkello Witherspoon, and Ahkello Witherspoon actually said that he was purposely trying to get under the skin of George Pickens and trick him into getting a penalty. And him knowing the playbook, him knowing the Steelers wide receivers' personality, him knowing what gets under people's skin, he said that he was purposely trying to get under their skin to draw a penalty, and that's what NFL people are going to do. That's what the defenses are going to do. They're going to try to trick you. They're going to try to get under your skin and make you get a dumb penalty and cost your team. And in certain situations, you need to know when to hold back. And Ahkello Witherspoon admitted to it, trying to get under the skin of George Pickens. And I know many other wide receivers and any other cornerbacks or defensive players are trying to get under each other's skin. It goes both ways. So you just need to know when to keep your head down and keep working, and when you need to let out your emotion. In certain situations, George Pickens just doesn't have that under control yet, but at least he has his game under control, and he's at least good at the wide receiver position. So if he's going to get taunting penalties, at least he's good at wide receiver and makes plays for the Steelers. Because if he wasn't, then there would be no room for him. But since he is, I guess it's tolerable. So with that being said, that's the end of this video. Let me know down in the comments below, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about Big Ben blaming Mike Tomlin for allowing George Pickens' behavior to be allowed on the field, and him maybe being the next Antonio Brown in terms of that situation, and Big Ben is scared of that? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below about that, and your thoughts down in the comments below about Ahkello Witherspoon purposely trying to get under the skin of George Pickens and Mike Tomlin blaming it all on the refs. Let me know your thoughts. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel down below as well if next year's content analysis reports. Like the video, turn on post notifications down below for the channel as well, so you get notified whenever I post next year's video. And every single day, I post a new video covering the Steelers, whether that be game breakdowns, reactions, news, with your latest updates, highlights, injuries, everything like that. I cover Pittsburgh Steelers every single day. And if you want to stay tuned and never miss a video and stay up to date with everything Pittsburgh Steelers, turn on notifications, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all later. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.